The stress of having the wrong tenant in your house, I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. And if you've ever thought about renting out your home or even just part of it, I can almost guarantee you've heard those tenant horror stories from a family member or a friend, and now it's got you thinking, what if I choose the wrong tenants? Well, I did, and it costed me thousands. This is what my coach house looked like when I handed over the keys. Beautiful, clean, perfect, really. And 100 days later, this is what I got back: broken doors, massive holes in the walls, stolen TV, bed mattress, and all the furniture ruined. And this was the tip of the iceberg. But this wasn't just bad tenants, it was a full-blown nightmare. Thousands in damages and unpaid rent, months of stress, cops called multiple times, their truck even got towed because turns out it wasn't even theirs. And the worst part, I thought I screened them properly. I thought I did my due diligence. And this is why I'm making this video, because I don't want you to go through exactly what I did. I'm gonna walk you through exactly what happened. From the day the tenants moved in, to the red flags I ignored, to the moment that things started spiraling out of control. I'll show you the paperwork, the government forms, and the confusing rental board, to the outrageous bailiff fees. If you don't know, they are expensive. I'm going to show you all of it. Now, just a quick disclaimer, because this did happen in British Columbia, so the rules and processes might look a little different just depending where you are. But what I can confirm is that the lessons and tips that I'm about to share in this video will definitely apply no matter where you are. So you're going to want to watch and save this video as reference for the future, because I know I will. So like any good story, we got to start from the beginning, with trying to find the right tenant. Now, when you're in that stage, you're probably asking yourself, where do I even look? Or what's the best way to find someone? For me, there are a few go-to options. First, I always talk to friends and family. Start asking around saying, hey, do you know of anyone that's looking to rent out a place? Those are your trusted people. And then naturally, you start reaching out a little farther, talking to people in your extended circles. We're talking friends of friends, or friends of family for that matter. For myself, I also tapped into communities I'm already part of. For me, that included my local church here, which had a community board where I could post my ad and let people know what I'm looking for. And so in your case, you need to start thinking strategically. Where are you connected? Where can you put the word out? And that's exactly what I did. But unfortunately, I didn't find anybody. No solid leads from my family, friends, or my extended network. So like many of us, we resort to Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, all of those lovely online platforms. And I'm sure you already know this, but let me tell you, dealing with people on these websites are just, it's painful. You get all kinds. People who message you who seem super interested, and then they ghost you. It's the usual, unfortunately. But after messaging a bunch of people and just kind of going back and forth, a few people actually showed up to see the place, which resulted in me finally finding someone I was willing to let live in my rental unit. They seemed great. They were ready to move in, and then they backed out last minute. And now I'm sitting here a couple weeks gone, no tenant, and the pressure is building because rent and bills, they're still due. So I went back through my list, and there was one more person who had come by earlier, which was my second, but realistically my only option. And I decided to go with them. Now, if present day me could go back and talk to past me at this moment, I'd say one thing loud and clear: that was a bad call. Don't just go with the person who happens to be available, just because you need someone to help cover the bills. And I get it, trust me. I was in the exact position. Bills are piling up, the pressure was real, and so I rushed it. But if I look back, the cost that came later far exceeded what it would have costed me if I would have just waited 1 month or maybe 2 to find the right person. So here's just a quick tip for you. Don't choose someone because you're stressed about money. It's tempting, but if something goes wrong, it'll cost you way more in the long run. But anyways, these people seem great. They were friendly, they were talkative and engaging, and they even said they worked on the very house that I live in right now. They did the siding or something, and they said all the right things, right? We're looking to stay long term. We don't party. There's going to be no issues. We're super quiet and responsible. They gave me the full sales pitch, and I, hook, line, and sinker, I bought it. Now, looking back, there were definitely a few things that I should have paid more attention to. At the time, they didn't really seem like big deals, but now They were clear red flags. For starters, the communication wasn't great. There were stretches where I wouldn't hear from them for a couple days. No follow-up, no updates, just silence. And then there was this car situation. They said they had a car broken down, which, hey, it's fine, things happen. But I never did see that car for a while. And then the references. I made the calls like any good landlord should, but one of the voicemail greetings that I got from the one reference was just a whole bunch of profanity. Now, nothing against anyone personally, but it really made me pause and think, who are these people surrounded by? And will I have to deal with them as well? It didn't paint the best of picture. And while none of these were deal breakers really on their own, put together, they should have made me think twice. But unfortunately I didn't, and I moved forward anyways. Now, before we jump into the paperwork and just the move-in day tips, you might be wondering, okay, Rich, well, what exactly makes a good tenant? Or maybe more importantly, what should I be looking for in a tenant? And after going through all of this entire process, this experience, and actually talking to a bailiff who's been in the industry for more than 30 years, I can tell you exactly what I'll be looking for going forward. And here's the list. Call their employer. Make sure they actually work where they say they do. Don't just take their word for it, confirm it. I want you to run a credit check. This gives you a good sense of how reliably they pay bills and a pattern if they've missed any payments. That's a red flag. Do a criminal record check. Now, this one isn't always required, but in my case, it would have revealed a lot and saved me a ton of stress. So just an important note here that I want to mention is that for the criminal and credit checks, you need their consent, otherwise you can't access it without it. And so if they're not willing to give it to you or allow you to access it, in my opinion, it's a bit of a red flag. Next is talk to their current or former landlords. Don't just rely on the references they give you. They might hand you a number of a friend or a family member pretending to be a landlord. Next is check their ID, their actual driver's license or some sort of ID. You want to make sure that their names match what they told you. Because in my case, they gave me their wrong names, which leads into my next point. Search their name on the BC Court Registry. If I would have done just this one thing, it would have saved me thousands of dollars. And yes, you can do it online. It's public info. It's super easy and free to use. You'll see if there's any past tenancy disputes or court appearances or other red flags that you really should know about. Which in my case, when I finally figured this out, these people had quite the rap sheet. And I'll show you how later in the video, so don't worry. Next one, you're gonna wanna look inside their car. I know it sounds strange, but this came straight from the bailiff. How they'll treat your car is how they'll treat your home. Because if their car is trashed, well, you have your answer. And then the last one on my list is check their social media. People post everything online these days, from the parties they went to, the rants, the lifestyle choices. It's kind of comical, but it's a great window into who they really are. And if you're going to be living next to them like I was, or below, or however the situation is, it's especially important. Because if you think about it, tenants in most cases will put their best foot forward. And I don't blame them. And it's no real different than applying for a job, right? These people, they present themselves well. And then when in reality, they're not exactly who they say they are. So you need to do your digging. And so these are the things that I'll be doing every single time from now on. But enough of that, let's get back to the story. Now came the paperwork and move-in day. And so if you're in this position, you got to schedule a time, coordinate everything, make sure all the ducks are in a row. And most of the time people move in on the 1st of the month, or maybe it's the 15th of the month. Kind of just depends on what your scenario is. And so the question is, when do you actually sign the paperwork? Is it the day of, the day before, a week before, or when do you do it? And there's no real hard rule on this, but for me, my go-to has always been sign everything on move-in day. You show up, you sign the lease, you hand over the keys. Money and deposit are exchanged at the same time as well. Now here's what happened in my case. They showed up, ready to sign, but when it came time for the damage deposit, they gave me a story. They told me they're waiting for the damage deposit from the last place that they just moved out of. We'll get it to you in about a week. Now, someone who's been pretty genuinely trusting in most cases, I said, okay, that's fine. Just send it over as soon as you get it. Rent was due on the 1st. They paid that. So I handed over the keys. Now there's 2 tips I want to give you real quick before moving on here, both of which I didn't do and I wish I did. Now the first tip is related to a document called Condition Inspection Report. It's RTB 27. And basically, it gets the tenant to agree and sign off on the condition of the home that it's currently in. There's no spots for pictures, but ideally you do take some as well and then get them to sign off on that too. Because what you don't want is a he said, she said going on later when they decide to move out. And so fill out this RTB 27 and get them to sign it. Now, the next tip is that there's a section where the tenant can provide their email address in the residential tenancy contract. And it's going to be on the first page. It says it's optional, but in my opinion, it is definitely not optional. And so if they fill that in, if they check that box, it legally allows you as the landlord to send official documents by email instead of to hand deliver them in person. Now, this is super handy if the rental unit is in a different city or it's across town, or in my case, they avoid you like the plague so that it buys them more time to stay in your place and potentially destroy it even more. And so please, please make sure you fill that in, as it can save you a ton of time and headaches if anything were ever to go sideways, especially when it comes to things like servicing notices or filing disputes. But now back to the deposit and payment. I realized that this is something that I should have been more clear about, especially during those initial conversations. There should be no room for interpretation. The expectation should have been rent and full damage deposit must be paid on or before the day you move in. If that doesn't happen, we do not sign the contract, period. And so if you're watching this and you're planning to rent out your space, so here's a key tip for you. Set the expectation early and stick to it. It might feel a little uncomfortable in the moment, but trust me, it'll save you a whole lot of pain down the road. Because here's the thing, if they're already having trouble getting you the $750 in my case for the damage deposit, what's not to say they'll have trouble down the road? If someone can't come up with the money up front when everything's still fresh and they're trying to make a good impression on you, it's kind of a big warning sign. So again, just a key tip, don't brush that off. Think about that when you're collecting rent and the damage deposit. And real quick, if you are trying to write this all down as I go, don't worry. I put together a PDF guide with all of the key tips that I'm gonna be sharing in this video, from how to screen for tenants, what to watch out for. You're gonna be able to download it so you can just focus on watching for now and just soak it all in. But enough of that, let's get back to the story. Now, fast forward a couple weeks, they're all moved in, they've got their stuff there, life in the coach house is underway. But there's still one thing lingering here. Where's the damage deposit? And so I keep asking, hey, just checking in here, have you got the damage deposit yet? And they just keep saying, it's coming, Rich, it's on the way, we're just waiting on it. But I'm sure, as you can guess, it never came. Weeks go by, and at this point, I still haven't received a single dollar of that deposit. And that's truly where the sinking feeling starts to set in for me. Something is not right. But here's the thing, I've never dealt with this before, and maybe you haven't either. And so now I'm sitting here wondering, what kind of legal action can I even take? Or what does the tenancy branch say about this kind of stuff? And what are my rights as a landlord in British Columbia? And that's when I knew I needed to start digging and figure this out. So after scrolling through the internet, I figured out what I could actually do. And according to the residential tenancy branch, I came across something called the RTB Form 33. And the full title on this is 1 month notice to end tenancy for cause or end of employment. Now, this form lays out a whole list of reasons you can give the tenant 1 month's notice to end tenancy. And guess what's on that list? Damage deposit not paid within 30 days of tenancy's start date. And that's when it clicked. I realized I had to wait a full 30 days from the day they moved in just to be able to issue this notice. And once that notice was served, they still get another 30 days before they're required to move out. So now I'm doing the math. I'm like, that is 2 full months where I'm stuck in this situation before I can legally move things forward. And so now I'm stuck waiting till the end of the month, because that's when the 30-day mark hits and I can finally use the RTB 33 form. But here's the problem. That's also when next month's rent is due. And that's where I start to panic just a little. I'm already out the damage deposit, and now I'm thinking, what if they don't pay next month's rent either? Like, how deep is this hole even gonna go? And so I kept digging, trying to figure out what I could do sooner. And that's when I came across RTB Form 30. This one's for 10-day notice to end tenancy for unpaid rent or utilities. And suddenly I realized, okay, I don't have to wait 30 days. If they miss rent, I can serve this immediately. But even then, it's not what I wanted. I didn't want to evict them. I just wanted them to pay. And so I waited. And so the day finally came. The first of the month rolled around, and to no surprise, but still a deep disappointment, no rent was paid. Now, this is where communication really started to fall apart. I tried texting, I tried calling, nothing really happened. And eventually I get the message, and it's just more excuses, unfortunately. I gave the money to my girlfriend, she gambled it away. Just give us a few more days. The company I'm working for hasn't paid me yet. It was just one excuse after another. Meanwhile, I'm still thinking here, what the heck do I even do now? I've got no rent, no damage deposit, and really no communication. Just a bunch of empty promises. And finally, after another week of empty promises and delays, I've had enough. Still no payment, still no resolution, so I submitted the application to the tenants to start the formal process. Because here's the thing, throughout this entire time, there were tons of people coming and going, and it wasn't just the tenants. There were random guests, fighting between the tenants, and total disrespect for the space. And at this point, it wasn't just about rent anymore. Enough was enough. They just needed to go. But here's the catch. The one thing that could completely counteract this dispute that I filed was hidden in the fine print. Within the RTB 30 form, the rules are pretty specific. The tenants have 10 days to vacate the property if they don't pay. But, and this is the big one, they also have 5 days from the date they receive the notice to pay what they owe and cancel the eviction process entirely. And so if they pay within that 5-day window, it's like this never happened and the notice becomes void and they're allowed to continue to live there as if the dispute never happened. And so you can probably imagine how this can become quite the vicious cycle. And one thing I just want to mention real quick, just an important note, is how the date of receipt works. Because depending on how you deliver the dispute is how it's deemed received. And so it may not just be 5 days, it could be more. And don't worry about fully understanding this concept just a second, because I'm going to be explaining this a little later in the video. But just know if that you're taking the right steps, the system still gives the tenants the last chance to reset everything, even after weeks of non-payments and problems. So keep that in mind. So once again, to no surprise, there was no money that came in by the 5th day. And then when the 10th day rolled around, they didn't leave. Communication was basically non-existent at this point. Just more silence, more of them trying to avoid me, and just zero accountability, really. And that's when I knew it was time to take the next step. Get the residential tenancy branch involved. It was a bunch of paperwork and jumping through hoops, but eventually I got it all done and sent it off. And in that moment, I remember thinking, okay, that's it. I've officially started the process to kick these people out. And truthfully, it felt like progress. Finally. But as what you're about to see, things were just getting started. So about 2 days after I submitted the application, I get a phone call. It's the residential tenancy branch. And they tell me there's a problem with your application. And now before I get into what they said exactly, let me just back up for a second, because filing this dispute taught me something really important. There were 2 documents that I needed to include. First one being RTB 46, the Landlord Direct Request Worksheet. And the second form being RTB 34, which is the proof of service, notice to end tenancy, and written demand to pay utilities. Now, the first one there, that one's pretty straightforward. You just list what's owed by the tenant, unpaid rent, utilities, whatever, and you just sign it. Super simple. But it was the RTB 34 that I would soon find out to be the problem. You see, this form is all about proving that you actually serve the tenant the eviction notice properly. And part of that proof includes having a witness or getting the tenant to sign the documents, which wasn't going to happen in my case. And so you basically need someone who can verify that you handed the documents to the tenants in person. Now, here's where I thought I was okay, as I didn't know or have a live witness with me at the time. But I had video recording of me giving the notice to the tenant. And the RTB 34 actually includes a section where you can describe how this service was carried out. And so that's exactly what I did. I explained who I gave it to, when it happened, and let them know that I had video evidence to back up this claim. Plus, when you file the application, they let you submit supporting documents, photos, files. So that's what I did. And I figured I was covered. But as I quickly learned, that wasn't quite the case. And so back to that phone call. I answer it. I'm speaking with this woman from the residential tenancy branch, and she tells me, your RTB 34, the proof of service form, is invalid because I didn't have a witness present when I handed the eviction notice to my tenants. The entire application, which I paid $100 for, is now considered void. She tells me I'll need to resubmit everything because this is where I go off a little bit because it makes no sense to me. If I wanted to, I could forge that document. I could write the name, fake signature, or get a buddy or neighbor to say, yeah, I saw him do it, even if they didn't. But apparently that's considered better than actual video proof. I asked her flat out, how is that more trustworthy than a video? And she had no answer. Surprise. Let me just interject here for a second because this is really important. If you are going to submit a dispute or serve a notice to end tenancy, you need a witness. And that's what the RTB 34 form is for. It's called proof of service. Make sure you have a friend, a neighbor, someone you trust there to witness you delivering the notice. Whether you're handing it to the tenant directly or posting it on the door, get someone there with you who can confirm it happened. Because when it comes to fill out the RTB 34, you're going to need that name and signature as proof. So trust me, don't skip this step. It seems small, but it can completely derail your entire application if you miss it. Now back to the story. And honestly, it frustrates me just saying this, but I had just wasted 15 full days going through the dispute process, only for it to be rejected by the residential tenancy branch. All that time, all that effort, gone. And so now I had to start completely over. I filled out another RTB 30, the 10-day notice for unpaid rent. This time, I didn't even bother trying to track them down. They were clearly avoiding me, so I posted it directly on the door. But this time I made sure everything was done right. I had my neighbor act as my witness, sign the RTB 34 properly, and submit another full application. But the absolute craziest part, because the first application was rejected, I now had to wait another full 10 days notice. Plus, just like before, they have 5 days to dispute the notice or pay what they owed. And if they pay within those 5 days, like I mentioned before, it would have been as if none of this ever happened. The notice becomes void and they keep living there like normal. So not only was I losing time, I was also giving them yet another chance to stay even after all the damage and missed payments. And only then could I resubmit an application to the RTB, which meant awaiting another 15 days just to have my application sent in again. So in total, I had now lost over a month just trying to follow the system. Now here's another tip that I really want to make sure that you are aware of. And I've alluded to it a few times here already in this video, but it's about the day a notice is officially considered received. It's something that the residential tenancy branch takes pretty seriously here because they want to make sure or allow enough time for the person being served to review and receive the documents before the deadline kicks in. And so here's how it works. If you hand a notice in person, the notice is considered received that same day. That's the best case scenario. The clock starts immediately. Though in my case, the tenants figured that out and would purposely leave the house late at night or wait until my truck was gone before slipping outside. Next one is email. If the tenant has provided their email on the tenancy agreement, it's considered received 3 days later. Mail slot, mailbox, or fax also considered received 3 days later. And then posting the notice on the door or an obvious place, same thing, it's 3 days later. And the biggest delay of all, registered mail or regular mail. The notice is considered received 5 full days later. So if you're working with tight timelines, how you serve a notice matters. And understanding the date of receipt rule can make or break your ability to move forward quickly. And so if you're still unsure of all of this, head over to the residential tenancy branch's website. They actually have a calculator that helps you figure out when a notice is officially considered received and when you can legally begin the dispute process. Truly, it's about the only thing the RTB has going for it is this calculator. So have fun. Now here's something that was good to know, but unfortunately, I found out a little too late in my own situation. And so if you've served a 10-day notice and you already know that the tenant aren't going to vacate the property, so for example, they haven't paid by day 5 and the communication has gone cold, you actually have an option to apply for an order of possession. Official document saying the tenants must leave the premise starting on day 6. You don't have to wait till day 10. You can actually get ahead of it and submit your application in earlier, which could save you about 4 business days in the overall process. So if it's clear that they're not planning to leave, don't stick around hoping for a miracle. Day 6, start the application. It may not sound like much, but in a world of tenancy disputes, saving 4 days is huge, especially when every day is costing you more money and more stress. So up to this point, I just want to quickly talk about what this has costed me so far. So it's going to be $100 for filing a dispute. Thankfully, the RTB refunded my first application, so I only had to pay that once. I was still missing the full damage deposit, $750, and now I haven't seen a single dollar for the second month's rent, which is another $1,600. So altogether, that's been $2,450 out of pocket, and this whole situation isn't even close to being over yet. And just wait till you see the cost of the bailiffs. It was absolutely absurd. I had no idea it was going to cost that much. Now back to the story. The second application was submitted. All the information has been properly updated this time, and now I'm just patiently waiting for that email, the one that confirms the application has been accepted. And sure enough, I get it. I'm excited. Finally, I can just move forward. But that's now where the next step begins. I have to prepare something called the Notice of Dispute Resolution by a Direct Request Proceeding Package. It's a mouthful, but long story short, you need to create full evidence package that includes everything you've submitted, because the tenant has a legal right to receive all of the documents and evidence related to this dispute. So just keep that in mind. Anything you submit to the RTB, the tenant will get a copy of it. On screen, I'm just going to drop a list of what I had to include just for reference, but make sure you use the list in the email that you get, because it could have changed by now. And depending how many people you have on your tenancy agreement, you're going to have to make a copy for each of them, which meant I had to create and deliver separate packages for each person. Now, there's only 3 legal ways you can serve this package at the time I'm going through this. And so the first one is Canada Post registered mail. Second one is going to be in person, but that requires a proof of service using the RTB 44. And then the last one being email, only if the tenant agrees in writing that their email address is valid for service, which again ties back to that box on the contract I mentioned earlier. And this is where that email agreement would have come in clutch, because I could have just hit send and been done. But unfortunately, I didn't do that. I didn't have that filled out. And trying to serve them in person, well, that just wasn't happening, as they were just completely avoiding me. And so I had no choice but to go with registered mail. And this is also super frustrating because I had to send a package to my own address. Why, you might ask? Because that's where they were living, behind my house in the coach house. So I had to physically go down to Canada Post, pay the $40, send the package with tracking, and then wait 5 days for it to arrive at my front door, because the coach house doesn't have its own mailbox, just to legally deliver the documents to my tenants. It's laughable, because then I have to give it to my tenants, which I couldn't get a hold of. So there was no way they were ever going to see these documents in the first place. It was just an absolute waste of time, in my opinion. And at this point, I'm just trying to jump through the hoops as fast as possible so that I can get that order of possession, so that the tenants know that they have to leave. Now, just an FYI, during all of this, I've been talking to a good buddy of mine who's a property manager. I'm going to put his information in the description, because he was a saint throughout this entire process. So quick shout out to him. If you need help and you're in British Columbia, he's your guy. He's been helping me navigate the process, offering me advice, and just keeping me sane through all this, because it's challenging. And the one thing that he told me that stuck with me was this process can take a while, especially if your tenants dispute it or provide evidence claiming that they're legally allowed to stay. But thankfully, in my case, the tenants, they didn't submit a response or anything of that matter. It actually worked in my favor, because once the evidence package was delivered to my property, I received the confirmation ruling from the RTB right then. And it gave me an official move-out date stating that they were legally required to vacate the property 7 days after receiving the notice. For the first time in this entire process, there was finally a deadline. Or so I thought. Now, while I'm juggling all this paperwork, just to give you an update on what was currently actually happening with the tenants and the neighborhood in general, it was just pure chaos. There's constant people coming and going, strangers I didn't even recognize coming at all hours of the night. The cops were called multiple times. There was disturbances, yelling. Even one night there was a knife fight. Yeah, a knife fight. The police had to enter the premise. They took a bunch of stuff. There was clear drug use happening. And at one point, I'll show you the video here, but the tenant's truck, or at least the one I thought belonged to the tenant, got towed. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, Rich, you've got the order of possession, you've gone through the entire process. It's been what, 2 months? Surely that means they have to leave and you finally get access to your property, right? Well, you'd be wrong, because here's what I didn't fully realize. The order of possession doesn't automatically remove the tenants. It's bizarre. Like, why not? They have to leave voluntarily. They have to legally evict themselves. You cannot force them out. You're not allowed to change the locks. You can't just show up and throw their stuff out. And when they refuse to leave, which mine did, and just talking about this gets me fired up. But the next steps, unfortunately, is going to the courts, which is another whole process I had no idea about. And then hire a licensed bailiff to carry this all out. Honestly, I couldn't believe it. After everything that I've already gone through, I now have to go through another legal process, pay even more money just to enforce something I already won. It felt completely backwards. Now here's a quick tip if you're at the point where your tenants still haven't moved out and you need to get the courts involved so that they can send an order of possession to the bailiffs to enforce the eviction. Let me give you some important advice. Like seriously, this will save you a ton of time and stress, which is go talk to the bailiffs first, but not just any bailiffs. It has to be a court-approved bailiff. You can find a list online through the government of British Columbia's website. There's going to be a list of them there that you can talk to. These are the only bailiffs authorized to enforce eviction orders from the residential tenancy branch. That's what I did, and it was incredibly helpful. They gave me a full document package of everything I needed to fill out, an affidavit, a right of possession, supporting forms, and even a template for how to format it all. Basically, they just walked me through the entire process of what the courts would expect so I could show up fully prepared. Now, another quick important detail before you go to the courts will want you to confirm that you have spoken with the residential tenancy branch and that there are no active disputes pending. In other words, that your tenants haven't suddenly filed something to delay the process. So make sure you call the RTB just to confirm everything is clear, and then go to the courts. Because for some reason, if there's an active dispute still pending, you won't be able to proceed. And so quick recap. Step 1, I want you to find a court-appointed bailiff. Step 2, ask if they have a document package or a template that you can take. Step 3, I want you to fill out all of the paperwork. Step 4, I want you to confirm that the RTB, that there's no pending disputes. Step 5, I want you to head to the courts. Submit everything to keep the process moving. Now, when you are there at the courts, they're going to ask you what bailiff you want this document sent to. And hopefully you have one picked out, or if you have, give them the name of the bailiff that's been helping you out. And of course, don't forget you'll have to pay another fee to the courts for this as well, which for me was $120. Now, when I was doing my research, just Googling courts, bailiffs, eviction costs, something kept coming up that honestly shocked me at first. And it was this concept called cash for keys. And yeah, it's exactly what it sounds like. You literally offer your tenants cash just to get your keys back. Wait, I'm paying for them to leave my property. Even after they haven't paid rent, they've damaged the place and caused all of these problems. Yes, I know. It feels totally backwards. And trust me, I thought the exact same thing. But now that I've been through this process and that I've seen what I'm about to show you next, I get why people do it. Because when you look at what the bailiffs actually cost, it starts to make financial sense, even if it's frustrating and risky. That said, the cash for keys approach does have its own problems. Like, what if they take the money and don't leave? Or what if there's no formal agreement and they damage the place on the way out even more? Unless you got something in writing, it could feel like a huge gamble. So proceed at your own risk. But back to the bailiffs. They're expensive. Now, when you first engage with a court-approved bailiff, they're going to ask you a bunch of information up front. They're going to want to know things like who your tenants are, how many people are on the property, the size of the home, whether there's pets, vehicles, or just known safety concerns. And all of that is used to calculate something very important, the upfront deposit. Yes, you heard that right. Before they even touch your property, they require a deposit paid in full upfront. And it's not cheap. In my case, it was just a 1-bedroom, 1-bath coach house, and the starting cost was $1,400. And that was just the beginning. If you're dealing with a full-size home or a multi-unit property, you can expect that number to climb into the thousands But it gets even crazier. On top of that, you are required to sign off on the credit card authorization. I'm sure you know what that means already, but essentially they can charge your credit card for additional costs without notice if the expenses exceed the original estimate. So in simple terms, you are paying $1,400 plus upfront and then giving them permission to charge you even more later, no questions asked. It honestly feels insane, but this is just how the system works. Now, up to this point, I was still debating whether to go through hiring the bailiffs or the cash for keys. Part of me was hoping that I could still convince the tenants just to leave on their own, just by warning them that the bailiffs were coming. But what I came to realize, and this was the hard truth, is that people like this know the system. They know how to exploit it. They know the deadlines, they know the loopholes, they know how to stall the system. In a lot of cases, they've been through this before. So when it came right down to it, when the bailiffs were officially scheduled, I finally just accepted something that I think I knew deep down all along, that they were never going to leave on their own, not without being physically removed. And that's just the sad part, because here you are, a hardworking, honest person trying to provide a safe, clean, livable space for someone. And you're the one that gets burned and has to fit the entire bill. They took advantage of the system. They took advantage of the rules designed to protect tenants. And it left myself asking, how many other landlords has this happened to? How many people have been put through the same emotional and physical mess? And I just wanted to say, if you've been through something like this, or if you have any stories or advice, or even just thoughts to share, please, please, please drop them in the comments. Whether you're a landlord, a property manager, or someone who's just curious about how this system works, your insight could really help someone who stumbles across this video. It's a bit of a side rant, I know, but it felt like it's just something that I needed to say. But enough of that, back to the story. And so finally, the day has come. I get the phone call from the bailiff saying that they're coming today. And if you would have seen me in person, you'd be like, Rich, why are you so happy? After months of stress, damages, lies, delays, and just that legal red tape, they were finally getting kicked out. And I'm just thinking, hallelujah. It was the first real moment of relief throughout this entire process, knowing that finally I was going to get my property back. Now, as I promised earlier in this video, that I'd show you how to research someone's name on the court registry order. And so I wanted to do that now. And I bring this up at this point because I had no idea about this until the bailiff told me during this phone call I just had. And so what I want you to do is go to Google, type in BC Court Registry, and I got it open up already. Basically, you can hit the first or second one. Doesn't really gonna matter. And this is the page where you can essentially research people's names. And so on the side here, it's important because you can search traffic or criminal, you can search appeals or search civil. And so because of what we're dealing with RTB, it's gonna be civil. And now this is where you're gonna wanna put your tenants or your prospective tenants name in here to search for what's going on here. And so key things to watch out for: partially, that's what you're going to want to do. Keep it individual. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my name in here because I do have, because I did file an application or a process against my tenants. So that my name will show up here because you can search the tenants or the landlord's name. And so let me just make sure I get this code right. We'll hit search. And so this is what pops up. Obviously, I blurred their names, so you just can't see it, but this is what you're looking for: classification of files. So Supreme Enforcement, Legislative, Statute. And then what you can do also, you can see when it was opened, when it was processed. And so if you search this person's name and it's like a year ago or even less than a year ago, feel free to ask them, what's going on? What's happening here? And then if you really want to, you can view the document yourself, and then you got to pay, I think it's like $12 or something to view it. So that's how you do it. And you can search both people's names. It's not that difficult, really. Now we're about halfway through the eviction process, or so it seems. And just when I thought this nightmare was just finally wrapping up, I get a notification from my bank. You've been charged $2,000 to your credit card. And I'm standing there thinking like, huh? Like, what do you mean another $2,000? Charged to my credit card? For what? So I flagged down the bailiff. He was out coordinating everything with the moving crew. And I asked him flat out, like, what is going on here? And here's what he told me. Because my tenants were dragging their feet, refusing to cooperate, stalling this whole process out, all the while I'm being charged for a moving company with 4 guys standing around on the clock, a locksmith on site, 2 bailiffs who charged $70 an hour. And since my tenants were making everything take longer, that extra time was costing me extra money. And so now the bailiff company was hitting my card for an additional $2,000 on top of that $1,400 I already paid just to make sure their costs were covered. And let me tell you, I just wanted to lose it. We're talking months of stress, thousands of dollars gone. And now I'm footing the bill for my tenants, wasting everyone's time. It was unreal. Now here's another thing that kind of caught me off guard, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of it. You're also on the hook for storage costs. If the tenant leaves behind a bunch of stuff and the moving company or bailiff determines it has value, they'll take it and put it into storage. And guess who pays for that? You do. So not only are you paying for the bailiffs, the movers, and the locksmith, but now you could be paying hundreds more just to store your tenants' belongings. Now, luckily in my case, and I say luckily lightly, the unit was fully furnished by me, so there was no personal stuff or furniture left behind from the tenants. And unluckily, they trashed it all, so it's not like I got off easy here. But because the furniture was mine, there was no extra storage costs. That said, they still left behind a bunch of boxes of junk, random stuff, and just garbage all over my property. And they had 48 hours to come and get it. And I'm sure you can guess what happened. They didn't touch any of it. And so who had to pay to clean it up and get rid of it? Yep, that was me. Another cost dumped on the landlord. A couple hours later, and a couple $1,000s more in debt, the bailiffs finally kicked him out. And for the first time in just over 3 long, stressful months, I had my property back. But now came the part I've been dreading, seeing what my coach house actually looked like inside. I had no idea what I was about to walk into. So here's the footage I recorded that day. Let's take a look. So I'm just in my back alleyway here. Bailiffs have done their job. And this is all the stuff right here. Lots of stuff. So I've been in the unit once. Complete disaster. So I'll show you. Yeah. You kind of hear these horror stories and you hear them. Well, here's a real world example of what can happen. Yeah. First world example. Just stuff everywhere. Just gotta love people, right? That's the TV they stole. Same with the wall mount there. Got some damage to both the doors. Let's just open this up. Yeah, a bunch of stuff here. Oh, the toilet doesn't look damaged, the tub. Like just oh, there's a nice hole. That door's screwed. Look at the carpets. Bed's destroyed. That thing, I don't know what's going on there. You know, just random holes in the walls. Oh, look at that. Lovely. Because, you know, why not? Yeah. As you just saw, it wasn't pretty. And while the damage to the unit was frustrating, what really hit me the hardest was the financial toll this entire situation took. So let's break it down. Here's what it actually cost me start to finish. Now, just for the record, the bailiff company did reimburse me about $700 to $800 because they had overcharged my credit card. So that helped a little. But even with the refund, the overall cost was still substantial. So just to give you a clear picture and full transparency of what this whole ordeal costed me, here's a breakdown in the order that they came in. So first one being damage deposit of $750. Technically, it's not mine, but it's there. RTB filing, $100. First month's rent of not paying, $1,600. The second month of rent not paying, $1,600. Court paperwork and fees, $120. The bailiff deposit, $1,400. The third month not paying, $1,600. The bailiff remaining charge, $1,114.15. The landfill charge, $104.50. The repair costs, and this is just material, not my time, $1,420.11. The furniture, table, appliances, this was a fully furnished unit, $4,900. And then when you factor in the time, stress, and missed work, which good luck putting a price on that. Now, after adding that all up in my calculator, the final cost of what this nightmare costed me was $14,708.76. So after all of this, do I still believe in rentals? The short answer is yes, but only if you find the right tenant. And that's the key. Screening properly, having a process, and protecting yourself with paperwork, because that is not just best practice, it's survival. Because the wrong tenant won't just cost you money, they'll cost you time, peace of mind, and sometimes even relationships. We went through a lot of information here in this video as it is a little bit longer, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys got everything. But to make things easier, I've put together a PDF that recaps what we've covered. Best practices for screening tenants, a step-by-step breakdown of what to do if things go wrong, and a collection of all the tools and forms and tips that I personally found helpful. If this video helps even one of you, then I have done my job. But more importantly, if you have a story or you have some advice, or there's something that you've been through that you wish you knew beforehand, I want this video, and even more so the comment section, to become a wealth of knowledge. A spot where people can come back months, years, or even decades from now and learn from other people. Because I know I'll be watching this again, whether it's to remind myself before bringing in a new tenant, or to share it with a client who's going through something similar. So if that's you, drop your experience, your tips, your advice in the comments. But now what I will say is these are just my opinions. These are my experiences and what's worked for me. You should always do your own research. Look into the latest regulations and make decisions based on what you're comfortable with. Because some of what I've shared in this video might not apply to your situation, or it might not even be up to date by the time you're watching this. But I truly hope it was worth the watch and you found value. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.